In October 1985, I stopped drinking. Most importantly, I knew I was ready to. Few people around me then, though, thought that was possible. The people around me today, including my 3 grown children, would be shocked to see me take even one drink. I'm sharing my experience because if you're struggling with alcohol as I once did, I want you to know it's possible to beat it. And so we're clear? Had someone told me 30 years ago that I could be free from alcohol, I would have laughed at them. In those days, drinking impaired and impacted everything I did. Yet remarkably, alcohol is so not an issue for me these days, I actually feel I'm talking about someone else when I open up about it. But in reality, for more than 14 years of my life, the decision to drink or not drink consumed most of my waking thoughts each and every day. The story of how I got there may be similar to yours. What I remember most about being a kid are feelings of being afraid and feeling ashamed of myself. Our house was always tense. I was always on edge. I felt powerless. Looking back, perhaps I was overly sensitive. What I do know is the environment I grew up in was the perfect formula for my addiction to develop. And I'll never forget the first time I got drunk, because it was also the first time I didn't feel afraid or ashamed. It was the moment I became an alcoholic. I was 14. Like many people who turn to alcohol as a means of coping, in time alcohol became my greatest source of fear and shame. Fear that I'd make a spectacle of myself while drunk, and the shame of reliving it when I ran into people who'd seen me. Ironically, I had what most people would consider a lot going for me as a teenager. I was student council president, the school hockey goalie, and an honor student. But oddly, successes actually made me feel worse, because I felt like an imposter. I waited to fail and the day I'd be revealed for the worthless individual I really was. Alcohol numbed this negative messaging, but it soon dominated my life. If I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about drinking, or thinking about not drinking, or apologizing for drinking, or planning on drinking again. I never imagined a day when alcohol or drinking simply wouldn't matter to me. Things changed with the birth of my first child. I was ecstatic, but didn't trust myself to be a good parent. In fact, I worried I'd do something to hurt her. So for the first time, the fear of drinking became worse than the fear of not drinking. And this was actually the turning point. It was my first true step toward recovery. It may sound odd, but while I knew I drank too much, and generally scored real high on those self-check guides on whether you have a drinking problem, I'd never truly accepted that I was powerless to alcohol. So I'd go through periods of on and off again, where I'd stop for weeks and then slowly drift back to my drinking patterns. And these times were like being on a roller coaster. I'd go in and out of the emotional and physiological effects alcohol had on my mind and body. As I look back on it, I had a rough 18 months on my path to quitting, until I finally accepted the fact I could not guarantee what I'd do if I had one drink. In fact, I heard this statement at the one AA meeting I attended. And once I did accept this, I was able to put together a string of one-day successes. I've now had close to 25 years of one-day successes. I can honestly say drinking or not drinking means absolutely nothing to me anymore. And I've often thought about the 4 steps I went through and what could have made the process easier for me. Step 1 was about 18 months of ups and downs that I could have shortened if I'd understood and known how to lessen the effects of physiological withdrawal. Because as the alcohol left my system, I experienced unsettling impulses and erratic thought patterns that made me wonder if I was slowly losing my mind. When I later learned that alcohol withdrawal affects brain patterns, it was actually a relief to know all I was an alcoholic. Step 2. My recovery would have been a whole lot easier if I could have kept myself from drifting between stopping and binging. What I needed was a way to interrupt what I call the rationalization wave. I compare this to an automatic pilot I'd engage to create the opportunity for me to drink. It would start with the decision to stop for gas, which put me at the beer store. I then remember we needed milk, which put me near the cooler. I then remember we're having friends in on Saturday, so I could justify buying the beer now in order to save myself a trip later. I then put the beer in the fridge, needed to keep them cold after all, and as I unloaded the case, I'd decide to have one. All bets were off after that, let me tell you. And perhaps there's somebody watching this who can relate to that experience. Step 3. Stopping drinking was really only the first step. If I was to be happy, I needed to unlearn the negative messaging that had contributed to the fear and the shame in the first place. I've since discovered many useful books and other materials that have helped repattern how I think, and I'd be delighted to share details about which ones worked best for me. As for step 4, the goal to ultimately beating drinking is feeling in control of your life and on a path that's fulfilling. I've likewise discovered techniques and materials for moving forward in a positive direction that I'd also love to share. But none of it can happen until you stop drinking. If you continue to drink, you cannot unlearn the negative messaging nor feel in control. All you're doing is attempting to build a new house on a broken foundation, and that can't work. The Alcohol Detox Kit can help you stop drinking. It addresses step 1 by accelerating the physiological withdrawal process, and step 2 by interrupting the addiction wave automatic pilot. I think it could have shortened my 18 months down to a matter of days. But nothing would have helped me until I was truly motivated to stop. In my case, it was the birth of my daughter and the fear that if I continued drinking, I would lose her. It was a very powerful motivator. If you're thinking about trying our kit, please make sure you really want to stop drinking. Trust me, if you do stop, it will redefine the rest of your life, as it has for me. And take it from somebody who's been there, the Alcohol Detox Kit will give you a head start.